Nobody woke up at 15 years of age and said, I'm going to become a drug addict. People drifted into it. They drifted into it because of all the stuff that I talked about. So we have to lift the shame, and the only way we lift the shame, see, drug addicts are very ashamed of themselves. Anybody here who's ever had an addiction problem, you know how ashamed you were and how poisonous that shame is. And how healing it is if somebody can talk to you who's not judging you, who's not rejecting you, who's not punishing you, who just says, hey, you got a problem. So that's the actual first step. Then in that context, we need to help people understand themselves and understand their behaviors. Let me tell you a story about myself too. I've been married to my wife Ray now for 39 years, next month. So let's say one night, 10 years ago, I say to Ray, I indicate that I'd like to have intimate physical contact, sex. And she says no. And I know that's hard to believe that she would say that to me, but it's happened. How do I react? Well, so say 10 years ago, I'm 54 years old, 10 years ago, and I'm a national medical writer for the Globe and Mail, and I'm a busy family doctor, and I'm a speaker and all this kind of stuff, and director of palliative care at Vancouver. I got all these titles and achievements. So how does this guy respond when his wife says no? Well, in my case, I either go into a rage, or I curl into a fetal ball like this, and I wish that I was dead, and next morning I can't even look her in the eye. No. What sense does that make? What sense does it make when there's nothing to worry about, and that's when you worry? Well, I'll tell you what sense it makes. It has to do with memory. It has to do with a kind of memory called implicit memory. Implicit memory, okay? I'll tell you what that is. There's two kinds of memories in the brain and the body. One kind of memory is what we call recall. When you can call back, recall what you had for breakfast yesterday, what you did 2 weeks ago, what a teacher said to you when you're in grade 5. That's recall. That's called explicit memory or recall. But the part of the brain that remembers that way, that encodes or photographs explicit memory, isn't even developed till the 2nd or 3rd year of life. So nobody recalls anything. If I asked you, what did the nurse wear when your mother delivered you, you wouldn't be able to tell me. There's no recall for that. Your brain wasn't even ready to recall that. But there's another kind of memory called implicit memory that's there right from birth. And that's the emotional memory of what happened without the recall. So the emotional experiences are imprinted in your brain, but you don't recall what caused the emotion. Okay? Now, you told us that you were abused, traumatized when you were 2 years old or 1 year old, right? You have no recall for that, but you have memory. The emotional memory, the implicit memory, is here in your brain. Now, what do you think emotionally you were experiencing when nothing was going on, when you were 1.5 years old, but you already been traumatized? Anxiety that something could happen at any time. And you have to pay attention. And if you're not seeing something, maybe that's the most dangerous time of all. There's a kind of thing that happens when when children are separated from the mothers. The children, for the first few days, are anxious. They look everywhere for the mom. Then they give up. They get depressed. They won't look anymore. They won't eat. They won't play. They won't do anything. And then after a few days of that, they come out of it. You can feed them again. They'll play again. They'll interact with caregivers. But what happens when the mother comes back? When the mother comes back, they get stressed physically. Their heart rate goes up. They get very tense. And they won't even look at the mother. They won't look at the mother. And what do you think that's about? They don't want to attach in case she leaves again. It's called defensive detachment. The brain, the kid is not doing it deliberately. The kid's brain is doing it. The kid's brain is saying, when you abandoned me, I felt so hurt that I'll never want to be that hurt again. So I'm never going to connect with you again. Now, when I was 11 months old, my mother gave me to a total stranger in the street and said to her, take this baby away. That's what she did. And she did that to save my life because she could barely stay alive herself. And I was very sick and I might have died. So she smuggled me out from the ghetto and I lived with some relatives for a few weeks until the Germans were defeated and they left Budapest by the Russian army. And then I was reunited. When I read that story about what happens to kids, I asked my mother, how did I respond to you when we were reunited? She said, like an utter stranger, you wouldn't even look at me for several days. Now, my wife says no to me, okay? If I was purely an adult, I would say, okay, that's disappointing, but I can handle it. Because life is disappointment, right? I mean, life is joy, and life is pain, and life is beauty, and life is ugliness, and life is everything, including disappointment. So what? That's just life. But when she says no to me, that memory of being abandoned by my mother gets triggered. Because here's this woman on whom I'm relying in my life, and whom I depend, and I need her to love me and to hold me, and she's saying no to me. That implicit memory gets triggered, and now I'm responding like I'm a one-year-old child. And by the way, most of the time there's a problem in your relationship with your spouse or with your friends and you get all upset. It's got nothing to do with the present. You know that, because you go back afterwards and you say, what the heck was that about? And what it was about was implicit memory. That tells you about your childhood. You're back in a state of implicit memory. Now the addicts are always full of implicit memory. So what was the addict's memory? The addict's memory was that he or she was abused by authority figures. So you're an authority figure, and you speak to them in a harsh way. Guess who that makes you? They respond to you like you were the guy abusing them in the first place. And now you can't get to first base. And that means that people working with addicts have to really take care of themselves. They have to be very aware of what's happening internally. Because I tell you what happens to me, when I'm not taking care of myself, let's face it, in a relationship between myself and my clients, who's got the power? I do. I mean, I got the status. If they complain about me, they don't get anywhere. I mean, let a druggie from the downtown east side go to the College of Physicians and make a complaint about a doctor. How far will they get? I'm not saying how it should be, I'm saying how it is. And all their lives, they have never experienced any power at all. So they won't even, they've threatened and all that. I don't give them a prescription. Okay, I'm going to the college. Okay, go ahead. So I have to be very careful. Now, when I'm not looking after myself, when I'm very stressed, then that means I go to work and I'm irritable. And so, I'm irritable. What do I trigger? I trigger the implicit memory of another authority figure who just doesn't give a damn about them. And when do I do that most especially? Especially when I myself am not living with integrity. So let me read you a paragraph here. So I told you I had this propensity to binge on shopping and obsess about it and spend a lot of money. And so when I'm like that, of course, I'm very judgmental of my patients. I'm looking at them saying, how can you be so weak-willed and why can't you just give it up? Exactly what I'm doing myself, right? We always judge other people for exactly we don't deal with in ourselves. In January 2006, when I'm in the midst of an extended CD obsession, and of course when I'm buying compact discs, of course, I become a complete addict. I lie. I bring them home, and my wife says, have you been shopping again? How can you even think such a thing? And I stash it on the porch, and when she goes to sleep, I smuggle it into the house. In January 2006, when I'm in the midst of an extended CD obsession, Sean comes moaning into my office. I'm messing up, he says. I'm puking and shitting. I've been doing heroin. Oh man. Sean has been in a recovery home for months. I haven't seen him for a long time, but he did call regularly, proudly reporting on his progress and his determination to stay clean. Once he left a voicemail, I'm calling to say that I appreciate all your help. I just want to say thanks, man. Now he's back in the downtown east side, pale, bedraggled, emaciated, unwashed. He's been living in the streets for weeks, but plans to admit himself to a Christian rehabilitation camp. Don't you think you should be back on the methadone, I suggest? Sean eagerly downs his first dose before recounting the details of his most recent relapse. I don't know why, Doc. I thought I just used one time, just the one time, and that was it. So are you going through with that Christian rehab thing? My family's pushing me, but I'm not up to it. Have you told them that? No. What stops you from being straight with them? Hurting them. They helped me so much, and I turned around and failed so miserably. I'm instantly filled with judgment, annoyed by his neediness and weakness of will, that is, by my own. I want to teach him a lesson. I don't believe you, I counter. Not that you don't mean it, but you're not being honest with yourself. You're not worried about hurting them. You already are hurting them. Yes, I am. But I want to go to that Christian place. I know what it's all about. It's really tough there. A complete schedule. It's harsh and rigid. That's not the point. I'm talking about telling your family the truth about how you feel and what you're up to. You just don't want to you just don't want to face the hassle of being clear with them. You're afraid of their judgment or of your own. You're too chicken to be honest. Sean throws me a direct glance and a abashed smile on his face. That's how it is, Doc. Well, then get off it. Be open about what you want and what you don't want. That much you do owe your family. And Doc, having pushed his addicted patient to tell the truth, will now go home and lie to his wife, his briefcase stuffed with the latest haul of classical music. And that's how it is for all of us. When we're not in integrity, that's when we're most judgmental of other people, because we can't stand seeing in others what we don't like about ourselves. Which is, I think, why people have such a hard time with drug addicts, because who in this society is not addicted? And this whole society is all about getting soothing from the outside. You have to look that way, you have to be that way, you have to buy that, get that, do that. It's all getting something from the outside to make yourself feel okay, which is what addiction is all about. Getting something from the outside to make yourself feel okay, temporarily. That's what addiction is. This whole society is addicted. The whole economy. And look at the consequence. The consequence is that we're destroying the earth. We're actually destroying the earth. And then we say to the drug addict, how can you shoot yourself full of cocaine when it's so damaging to you? Well, how can we do what we're doing to the earth when it's so damaging to all of us? But we can't stand seeing that part of ourselves. So we push it all to the addict. We say, what's wrong with individually helping the addict is their judgments. Is the judgments. So